Hello everybody. Hopefully everything is working as it should be. I've spent a bit of time tinkering today with the setup, so if there's any issues, just let me know. But welcome to I believe this is 11th installment of the podcast that's going up on YouTube. It's not the 11th live stream that I've done, but it's the 11th that we're actually kind of keeping track of. I do want to show off something new that I've spent some time working on today, just because when streaming before, I found it kind of difficult to kind of explain concepts and show them off without having to rely on Paint, which isn't the best tool in the world. So what I've done now is I have this second cam, which was my old camera. This streaming camera that I've got on my face at the moment is like the high quality one. But basically now I've just brought it up here. There's a second camera which I can kind of move around a little bit, and I've got it positioned over a whiteboard, so you'll be able to see my hand. I'll be able to basically do anything underneath it, right on the whiteboard. You can see here that I've also got this kind of focus list to work on for today's episode, so you guys kind of know what it is I'm actually actively doing at any given time. And also there is this kind of brainstorming space here for when I'm trying to explain a concept or trying to just kind of figure something out in my head. Hopefully it'll be a bit easier than working in Paint, although I may still bring it up occasionally. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I guess we'll get started. I'll show off what it is we're working on today. So I'll just bring up the code in the background quickly. But as some of you may know, we've been working on, let's quickly swap back, we've been working on this class here, so working on getting the design for the prop system, I wouldn't say finalised, but at least kind of fleshed out so I know what it is I'm working on the live streams moving forward. And to go back to the whiteboard today, I kind of want to focus on maybe not getting all of these done, but at least two if possible. So my main focuses today are on the prop spawning and despawning, which is a fairly kind of simple recycled process, but I might be using a different storage method than I've previously used, so that might take a bit of additional time. And prop swapping, which is a simple matter of once this system's set up, simply recycling data from old positional data when despawning an object and putting that into a new spawn, and potentially recycling other data as well that needs to go into the object constructor if anything comes up. So that might involve things like positional information, maybe speed, velocity, acceleration, that kind of thing. So that will be quite helpful later on. Let's say if we need to swap the state of an object to something else. So originally I think I was going to have a system where all of the states are wrapped up into the same object, but now what I'm going to do is have separate objects that you can just cycle between, and then if we want to control them externally, let's say an object has multiple damage states or something like that, that will be handled by a separate child class rather than something that is handled by the prop system itself. The prop system itself is going to be very bare bones. It's just going to be an interface for interacting with Unreal Engine basically, and making that slightly more streamlined, because I know that for me at least Unreal Engine can be quite difficult to work with sometimes, and I wanted a slightly more intuitive interface that's simple as just calling a function and putting in some basic data in there. And also I can set up this system to have all of the different basically have it configurable so that I've got all of the different 3D models already preloaded into it for easy access, rather than having to pull stuff out of files and stuff like that, although that may be a feature that comes on down the road as customizability on the user end becomes more of a thing. So yeah, then after that, if we get time, what I'll then look at is enabling physics interactions with the object. So this will be more kind of Unreal Engine work than anything else. It won't really be programming as such, but there might be a bit of it. That's basically just me getting the props and the terrain to a point where they're physically interactable, so that when we eventually move on to using the physics controller to the prop, and we can enable and disable things like gravity, collisions, and also like grid snapping and stuff, because with the voxel engine obviously we want things to be able to be placed on the grid. Kind of like how Minecraft has your traditional voxels, and then it has objects like fence posts and things that are kind of particle effect based and stuff that are still on the grid, but they're not technically voxel items, they're fairly different. So those are the 4 things that I wanted to focus on, and the reason I bring this up is because, and the reason I've done this as well, this whole thing, is because I know that the recent live stream that I did, and will be going up on the YouTube channel shortly, well, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be the previous one. It wasn't that high quality. It was something that I just kind of did to get back into the flow of setting all the stream up and everything like that. And I wasn't too happy with not only the focus, but also the quality of that live stream as well. So I do apologise for that. But it's something that, you know, you just kind of, I guess, iterate on and evolve with. So I'm not too like bothered by it, but it did bother me a little bit that I didn't hold myself to the quality standard that I normally would for live streams and kind of actually getting some work done. It was a bit too freeform for me, didn't really do a lot. Although it was kind of a nice catch up, so I guess it's good for getting you up to speed with what's happened. It was more kind of a refresher than anything else, but moving forward I will try to make these more high quality, hopefully more informative and a bit more focused as well, which is where this list comes in, this focus list, so that it gives me a bit more direction before I start the live stream to actually get stuck in, start developing things. And also I can use it as like an introduction in terms of a talking point, like I have done today already, which gets me into the flow of presenting, which is it's a nice thing for me, because sometimes it can be a bit jarring launching straight into development, so that's why it's helpful, I guess. And again, the brainstorming space is just kind of a replacement for I again probably will use it at some point, depending on how this setup works. Because I wish I could show you how kind of ghetto this setup is currently, but basically my webcam is strapped to a lamp. So it's not exactly the most stable solution in the world, and part of me is a bit worried about it falling to pieces, which is why also it wobbles as well if I move the floor or knock the chair that it's on or anything like that. So hopefully that won't all break. But yeah, let me swap back to here. And again, so the first item on the list is prop spawning and despawning. So what we're going to do is, now that we've got this kind of design class that I built before, we're going to simply start off by designing the return case. So this is just something that says this basically has been successful. And then I'm just going to return that. So this simply is just going to be a check that I'm going to have within the code that makes sure that an object has actually been spawned in. Oh, sorry, no, I've misremembered. What I was originally going to do is return the ID, just because of the way I'm designing the ID referencing system for objects. So this is going to be, yeah, actually prop instance ID, and then this is going to be returned so that anyone looking at this externally well, sorry, anyone calling this function externally can have an ID to reference if they should need to store the object or use it in the future for whatever reason. So this will equal -1. So to start off with, basically, if it starts off as -1, then and it's returned, we know that nothing's actually been spawned in correctly, and therefore we can either disregard whatever number it throws back or do something with it. That's kind of the simplest way I can think to do that for now. Just as long as I keep that in mind that I've actually done that, that should be helpful. So, Right, so let's look into spawning objects. So the way I'm going to store them is a part of this prop data storage class. So this struct, sorry, prop data storage struct. So this struct here will contain all of the information that I need for each object. It'll have an object limit of 256 for now, prop object limit of 256, and each thing that we'll be storing in terms of models will go into this static mesh component system. So we've looked at static meshes before, and basically that's just making it so that I don't have to repeat draw calls on the GPU for things that are duplicates. So let's say we've got lots of trees, for instance, we only have to send one model of that tree to the GPU and it can render it multiple times, rather than sending it across multiple times and rendering it multiple times, which is very slow. It gave us massive speed ups with the voxel system, and hopefully we can reuse that same technique here. So if I go to, let's have a look. So if I work out basically how I did this before, I can't remember off the top of my head, as with most stuff in Unreal Engine, so it's somewhat complicated. Let's find the container class. Let's copy that and then go into here and Control F and find all instances of this. So yeah, this is basically setting up every single, this is how we set up every single object in the game before, so I think what I'm going to do is do something similar. Basically I'm making a for loop for all of the objects that I want to load in. Now initially this will be quite simple. It'll just be a for loop with a case statement in it and maybe one or two objects that I've just pulled from previous things, so probably one of the old voxel blocks or something like that. So we will try using this same line pattern. We grab from in fact we don't need to grab anything. What we'll do is just in begin play, I'll just have a bit that's called setting up model instancing, so we know what it is, and then we'll just have a for loop where this is an int. This is, sure we can make that as I, it doesn't really matter. Length can be, let's just say it's 2 for now, I equals 1, that's, in fact we'll call this model ID. Same with here. Okay. And then in here we want a, I don't know why there's one. Okay. I appreciate actually that we could just run this one after the other, but I think the reason this is helpful is it just helps me keep track of the numbers. It's maybe a bit unnecessary thinking about it, keeping it within this for loop. I could instead just reference each index position, which is what I will do instead. So to do that, we basically have this system here where we're setting everything up. So yeah, let's get that. We'll have to rework some of this stuff. So it doesn't have 2 dimensions for one, and the name is completely different, so we'll get rid of those. There's also no variable that we're referencing this time, so we'll just say, oh, thinking about it, this is why there was the for loop, so that we do the same bit of code over and over again. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll undo that and we'll put that back in. Thought there was a reason, I just couldn't think of what it was. A lot of this is just trial and error, I think, but we'll get there. Won't take too long. So we want to attach it to prop data storage. That's the thing that we're using. Oops. I don't know what the hell it was I just did. Want to reference model ID. We also don't need this slightly convoluted string system, we only need one of them. In fact, we can just do name, I think, for this. Oh no, actually it's helpful to do it this way, because then we can have a dynamic name for each thing. Even if we're not adding together multiple things, I seem to recall. There we go. And sorry, we the wrong thing. There we go. Wait for that to catch up, I think that's fine. So then basically, as we have done in here, I'm just going to copy and paste one of these cases just so that I have something to work against. But essentially we're doing the same thing. This we had switches within switches, so we could set up multiple types, but obviously we don't need that. So what we're going to do is just copy this bit and set that here. Start with case 0 obviously, and then we'll work our way down, basically duplicating this bit of code. But we'll set it up properly first, so prop models, like that. Still doesn't, oh, I've capitalized it, that's why. I've done that a couple of times recently actually and just not realised. At least that's fine. I know that it's not broken. So essentially we want, let's in fact just stick to two things for now just so we can test it. We also need to change what models it is that we're loading in, because obviously we do not want to load in existing assets, otherwise it will get somewhat confusing. I think the best thing to load in all honesty, is just one of the blocks that we had before, if I've still got them. Might have gotten rid of them actually. Yeah, I think I got rid of them. What we'll do instead is we'll load in, what could we do? Load in a flat plane. So we'll copy the reference for that, go back into our code. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a bit of code as well where I set what model it is. Try and find that quickly. Yeah, it's this section here, so I need to duplicate this first. And in fact this has already got the flat thing in it, so I don't need to worry about copying that again. So I will stick that at the top. Oh no, in fact, so we've got different models every time, so let's put that in here. This will just be our test case for now. I will copy this part. So we're changing the actual object that we're referencing, which is fine. So we've set in the static mesh to that and also setting the material. I will change this to the bone texture. I believe I've got it copied in somewhere here. Find that quickly. Anywhere it doesn't say dot grass, there we go. So anything inside of the quotation marks has been copied, and we'll replace that in there. In fact, just so that we've got something to test against, I'll load in the grass one as well, but I'll make it obvious in the editor where it is so that I'm not getting it confused with existing blocks. Yep, that all seems fine, I think. Now we've got the setup done for the objects themselves. That shouldn't lead to any issues, but it may do, so I'll just have to be careful. What I'll do now is have to find the place at which actually spawning these in. Here we go. So this is a bit more complicated than I would like it to be. In fact, that's the deleting part. So we don't need this just yet. We will need it soon though. Here we go, this is the extra complicated bit. So we need to do this add instance thing. And these are some variables I think we have in the function, but I can't remember if I've put them in yet. But we will do prop models model ID instance, and yeah, we have XYZ, so that's fine. Model ID obviously isn't a thing, it's prop ID in this case. All I need to do. Deceptively simple, but I think that's because of how complicated my voxel implementation was, for various reasons. If there's anything else I need to do, so I need to update the transform. Well, that's only if I want to add rotations actually, I don't even need to do that. Going to double check everything. And also do this neat little trick, which is something that I wanted to do, which is returning the ID that's returned from here, so I can find what position it is in the list. In fact, no. So one thing I'm going to highlight now. There's a distinction between the model ID, which is where it is in the list. Maybe it's that. I think that's the variable I've already got. So prop model ID, and also where it is in prop data storage. So those are two separate things. I'm going to make a note of that now. Prop model ID, what was it? In the prop data. Right, yeah, there we go, that's happy. That's just storing where we've added the instance to, and then also we want to return what position it's stored in. This is where we set all of our properties and everything, so we need to search through. Go under there. Can't type. Or we will loop through each of the prop data things. Well, it's something that makes a bit more sense for future me looking through this. That is not the thing I needed to change, there we go. I'm not even referencing the right thing. Prop data store. But this isn't necessary. There we go. I believe you can do it that way. Never done it this way before, by the way, where I've just put the array kind of within the class itself, but I think that's fine. So to just quickly explain what this variable is going to do, this is going to inform whoever's looking through this array whether or not an object space is in use or not. So while all of this will be in memory at any given time, so there's always storage space for 256 objects no matter what, we won't necessarily be using them all. We might only be using one, we might not even be using any of them. But it's important to have this boolean in here to check what we're doing, whether or not that object space is active and whether or not we need to do anything with it. So I will include this within an if statement. fact, we want this to be a not. So if this is not true, it's not active, then we know that this space is fine. We can then update all of its properties. I think we really need to update anything immediately, other than maybe... So I'll just break the for loop. Doesn't it like it? Yeah, we're just storing the model ID, we're setting up the model itself, adding an instance of it, and then we are returning the variable up here that we've used. I don't think there's anything else we need to set up, maybe other than physics enabled. That's obviously quite important. That's just a boolean, so basically I copy exactly what I did here in terms of assignment. Obviously just put the local variable in there. That should be fine. What I'm going to do in here now, since this is the begin play section, I am going to call spawn a new prop. That isn't what I wanted. Give it a position of, oh I don't know, do it something tall. I can't remember what my current limitations are on the voxel engine, so let's just double check. 40, 40, 40, so let's give it something central, so 20, 20 and something high up. Prop int ID we'll call 0, and physics enabled will say really doesn't matter at this point, so that's fine. Okay, so this in theory, all being well, should spawn something in. Whether or not it actually will is another matter entirely, but we'll see. And of course there's errors. Right, it's probably something simple. Let's have a look. So not going to tell me where it is. Maybe it doesn't like it being called this way. Just do it like that. And let's see if this is a problem. So apparently you can't declare arrays within structs like you can single instances of that struct. I'll complete. I have a feeling this could just break everything, so we'll see. Engine has loaded in fine. Cannot see where it might be, so potentially either it's not spawning in anything at all, or it's just spawning it inside of something else, which is quite likely actually given how big that volume is in the middle. So what I will do is instead set its position to just so I'm close to it. I will do 0, 0, keep it at 30, and then there's no way it can really hide from me. So I don't think the layer that I spawn in the terrain controller is at level 30. I'll double check. Yeah, no, that's at level 15. Supposedly level 15. Can I see anything? Oh, here's one obvious thing. I've not even put it into the world. So we want the prop controller to be a thing. Like the terrain controller. I always kind of forget to do that with Unreal. Like, the association between objects and code has not quite got there yet. It's not like Unity. Unity to me is very intuitive. Oh, I see something. Oh, sick. That seems to be in the right place, I think. Awesome. Let's call the same thing, but on the other object that I have. Formatted properly. There we go. And it's this one here. So let's try that. Oh, select everything, and we'll shift it over by 2, just as a bit of room. There we go. File that again. Play. 2 spawned in now. 1 green one, which will be hard to see, and 1 grey one. Cool, so that's all working. I actually didn't expect that to work first time, but you know, I guess I'm just implementing something that's a lot simpler than what I was doing before, so nothing really too complicated just yet. So now the obvious thing to move on to, based on my little checklist here, is the despawning component of this first checkbox. So I think similar process, but basically we're just telling it what object we want to get rid of. It should work fairly simply. It should just be like a matter of giving it a number, saying we want to delete this, and then reversing the process. So we'll do that now. And I will get rid of that on there. Okay. Right. That's all done with. Delete prop. So this will be whether or not it can actually. The first one we'll have to find it. If it's active, we will return true. If it's false, obviously we'll return false. So sorry, that didn't really make much sense. What I'm trying to explain is, as part of this return condition, we want to see if we're actually deleting the object properly. So what we'll be returning is essentially the in fact, I'll write it out. So rather than explain it, I'll just show you. So has delete work for is object found is probably more descriptive. And then we want to say, so this is given a proper instance ID, so we're actually referencing it directly. So we basically, all we need to do is if one second. So we're checking against the object that ID that we've been provided. So we're looking through our list of objects and we're saying, is this particular object active? If it is, we do something with it. And if not, well, there is no if not, we just don't do anything, put simply, but the return here is that we tell the user whether or not it's actually deleted something. So in a roundabout way, if you were wanting to delete something but wanted to know, I don't know, let's say you were deleting an object but you weren't entirely sure that it existed in the first place, you could just do that. The only issue with this comes if the space is overwritten by another object at some point, but I think you as the user should be keeping track of that. So if you're deleting stuff twice, for instance, or you're doing certain incorrect things with the storage space that I've built, well, if I'm doing incorrect things with the storage space that I've built, then other objects that aren't supposed to get deleted will get deleted in game code. But that's something that, because I'm aware of it, I shouldn't have any issues with. I might do it at some point, but it will be relatively easy to fix if I can work out what's going on, and I've remembered how I've built it, which hopefully I will. So, if the object's found, what we want to do is, it's literally as simple as getting rid of the model for it and then setting the flag to false for that. We also don't need to reset any of the data, since when we're spawning a new prop, it will overwrite all the existing stuff anyway. So that's a nice kind of little side effect way of doing it this way. You don't actually need to do anything at the delete stage, and objects are incredibly fast to remove. Not as fast to spawn in, but that's kind of a given. It just means you're not messing around, basically. That's the reason, actually, that I favour using a static array of objects as opposed to a dynamic list. It makes saving and loading so much faster. It does, of course, set your memory limits at something fixed, which isn't always a good thing. Since our overhead is quite small on this data storage struct, I'm not too concerned about it. It's not as if we're storing a massive bit of data in memory, because the models themselves are actually stored in this separate system anyway, so it really doesn't matter at all. If we were to store the entire game object, let's say with its model, its data, maybe animations and that kind of thing, yeah, I wouldn't do it this way. I'd maybe do it with some kind of dynamic system attached to it or whatever, but this is fine for now. And it just makes spawning and loading stuff so quick compared to the alternative. Especially if you're dealing with a large number of objects and stuff that uses incremented IDs and stuff like that. It's a lot easier and a lot nicer, I think, to work with. It does come with some quirks, obviously, like I've said with the whole deleting thing. Like sometimes you can accidentally delete the incorrect object, but it's a nice way of designing, and I've always favoured it whenever I'm doing game engine work. I did a project at university last year, in my second year, where we basically built a small game engine, but it was a game engine from scratch, and the entire architecture was based on an array of structures, rather than like a list of objects or And again, yes, it's hard-coded, yes, the memory overhead is fixed and you can't make it any smaller, but it's very efficient on the CPU and GPU, which is what you want at the end of the day. Provided the rest of your game isn't very memory intensive. But since all the other stuff is handled by Unreal anyway, it's not important in this case, and I think we can get away with it. If we have to change it at a later date, we will do, but I'd rather do a small architectural rewrite like that than go down a complicated rabbit hole now. I just want to kind of get it working first. So it's literally as simple as saying we're not using the space anymore, and removing the... So we'll work out how it was done in here. Right, here we go. Right, so I'd actually completely forgotten about this, but essentially what I've done is, due to the fact that the engine is very slow in terms of recalculating your how do I put this? Because the engine is very slow in terms of removing things from the instant static mesh lists, what I've done instead is I've put them far enough away that they're not actually rendered. This was suggested to me by a lecturer as a kind of workaround, because when I was removing voxels before in the editor, the lag was horrendous, because every time it would try and recalculate the instant static mesh list, like in its entirety, rather than just remove a single item, and there's no way that I'm going in there and rewriting base engine code, not with my level of expertise, so this was like a kind of cheap, dirty hack, I'm gonna say, but it works. It's, from what I can tell anyway. It might come with issues down the road, but until that issue presents itself, I'm not going to ignore it, but I'm going to put up with it for now. So we need to know prop instance ID, and we are accessing prop models. Prop instance ID, there we go. So I need to remember what all of this stuff was. I think this is just where in the list it was, so I think I can just reuse that same thing, but let me check. So this is accessing the okay, so I do need two separate things in here. So this is the thing that I'm replacing currently, and this will need to be the specific model type which we can actually find. So this is actually prop instance ID. Or is it? No, it's not. Not at all. Okay, let's go back to here. So we actually already have something for this. Static mesh list position. I actually need to change my spawner slightly because I'm not making use of both of these. Kind of confused myself a little bit, but I will explain in a second once I update that. So for this is the position in the list that it's in. And then this here is the type of object that it is. So this is the prop model ID, so this is the type of model that it's using, and then this is the specific instance in the list that we're accessing. So that's the difference between the two, and that's something I need to now account for in the spawner as well, just because I forgot about that and forgot to do it. So I just need to identify whereabouts that goes, and then I can quickly update that. That isn't right. Enabled. So this should be static mesh list position. And we also need to save an additional section, which is the thing I was using before, prop model ID. That's all that is basically. We're just stating where it is. Or rather what object type it is. There we go. I believe that's everything, let me double check. So spawning in a new object of this type, looking through the list, if we find an empty space, if this is not active, set the prop model ID to the type that we've input. That's the type of object that it is. Then the static mesh position, so the place in the list that it is for that type of object, is prop models with the ID in there. Add instance, that's fine. So we're adding something to that list and then returning its position in the list. Enabling physics, that's fine. We're setting this, it breaks out of the for loop, and then we're returning the prop instance ID. This is something we haven't actually used yet. In fact, we can make use of yeah, I've not written this properly at all. Right, this should be fairly simple. What I'm going to do instead, put this in here. We're not returning that, we're returning prop storage space. Don't know what I was doing before. We also want a return of -1 if nothing is done. Literally that simple. Normally, I have been in the past. I've been advised against using multiple returns, but since this is such a small function, very obvious. I think what's going on here. Basically, we're just looking through. If we're successful, we're breaking out straight away. If not, we're going through all of the storage spaces and then returning -1 if we don't find anything. It's that simple. I hope that doesn't break anything. It shouldn't be. Again, we don't have to do this here. We can use a similar thing that we've just done. Do that directly in there. Have a return condition, return true, and then outside of that, obviously return false. Yeah, I think that's fine. So let's test this out. I'm gonna make sure that I haven't just broken everything. We'll give this a go. Hopefully it'll work. I'm well hungry. I'm gonna have a cookie. Excuse me if you can hear my munching. I'm starving. Well, nothing's crashed. And there are 2 things in the scene. That's great. So to test this out, I'm going to spawn a bunch of shit in the scene and then delete one of them. Target a specific one and delete it. I want the rock one. We don't need loads of objects, but just enough to test it out. And then specifically I'm going to delete prop, and then all I need to do is give it the ID that I want to reference, and I'm going to say 3. So that should be 1. So the middle one, because I believe it uses 0 as well, so just bear that in mind. Be the middle block out of the lot. I'm also going to reset this to 0 so that they all look the same, just because it's hard to see the green on the backdrop. Get this going. Compile that. I'm very sad that I've run out of cookies actually, I wish I had more. But what I do have, chocolate. Normally I'm not this unhealthy. Well, that's a lie, I am this unhealthy, but not all the time. Yeah, I'm sorry if you can hear me eating. I must have changed the wrong thing. Did this recompile? Doesn't look like it did. For some reason, sometimes Unreal misses code changes, and it's kind of annoying. That's definitely not what I'm trying to get it to do. I don't think it's detected these code changes. Oh, maybe it's because I didn't save it. Let's try again. I have to say, Oreo dairy milk is very nice. If you've not already tried it, do it. There we go. And I wanted to remove the middle one, which obviously hasn't happened. So let's try and work out why. Oh, maybe because we're not setting active to true, are we not? It's never actually finding it in the first place, which would make a lot of sense. See, small things like that you need to remember. Okay, hopefully this should do the trick. Okay, easy. Once you've got the code, like in terms of all this shit that I've done before, with spawning stuff in and instancing it and everything, Unreal, incredibly easy. But finding out what to use and how to use it is a nightmare, and I hated it when I first started using Unreal Engine. I still hate it now, but at least, you know, I've got a foundation to work with. I'm hoping that the more I use it, the more kind of intuitive it becomes, but I'm not finding this anywhere near as easy as I did Unity. Unity was a dream compared to this. I didn't realise just kind of how lucky I was to have that. But honestly, this has been really difficult to kind of learn for me. I keep on saying it in the live streams as well, like it's a nightmare. And I do wish it was a bit more intuitive. I don't understand some of the decisions that they've made in terms of the way it works. Maybe I just don't know enough about programming, in all honesty. Maybe my C++ isn't up to scratch or something like that. Which obviously I'll have to practice more going into my third year of uni, and potentially masters if I decide to go on with that, but I don't think I will. So yeah, so that all works. Next thing to do is switch back onto board cam. This has gone a bit all over the place, not sure. This is what I'm saying, like it's a bit ghetto at the minute, not really quite how I'd how I'd want it ideally if I could help it. But basically we've done this, so we'll kick that off. Did that at a bit of a weird angle. There you go. So I'm kind of leant over. Basically this board is on a chair right next to me down here, which is why my writing might not always be very neat if ever I'm doing work on this, and why I'm tilting over to the side to use it. So obviously I can't have it on my desk because I've got my keyboard and everything. But yeah, that's done. An ugly tick, but oh well. So now we'll do prop swapping. Now this, I think, is a relatively simple process, to be quite honest. we will have to find out the object's position, which I have got the code to do somewhere else, so I'll try that. But let's actually build the function first. So I'm wondering if one of these is redundant or not. They technically could have different use cases, but right now I do not have a use case for them. But what I mean by that is these two. One was originally going to be used for changing the type, which is what I'm doing now, so that's swapping the thing over entirely, but keeping its like variables. And this one was simply going to be for changing the model type, but obviously if I'm keeping all the same variables, it shouldn't matter. That being said, this one would be more efficient because all I'm doing is accessing the model. So whether or not both of them could actually have different use cases, I'm not sure. Maybe one, I don't know, maybe one gets rid of the animation controller or something like that. I think it's best I delete the entire thing for now, so what I'll do is I'll comment that one out, so it's not necessary. This, however, is the thing I'm now working on. So if, well, we'll do our usual changes. So if the spot is, oh sorry, I've just realised I've still got the thing open. There we go. Sorry about that. Did quite a bit of work there without swapping the cam over. That's something I'll have to get used to. Hopefully if people are watching, obviously let me know what's going on and I'll fix it. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm just having a look at something on the side here. Right, cool. So let's go back into this bit. Just as with before, we want to know if the space is active or not. It's essentially this kind of thing, but we obviously already know what thing it is that we're accessing, so it's more akin to this one actually. So I'll copy this and stick it here. So we know that the space is active, so we know that the object is in play. What we're going to do is we're going to call delete prop. Well, actually, we're going to save all its variables first, and then we're going to delete prop. So we don't need that because that's hard coded. We don't want that. We want to access this function in case any of the definitions for how we delete stuff changes. It's a little bit of abstraction and it's not as efficient, but it kind of protects us in the future if anything changes and we forget to update this one as well. Also just makes it a bit nicer in terms of code flow and everything. So if it's active, we want to save. What ones do we want to save? So let's close this so I can see. I believe the function call takes x, y, z. Prop ID and physics. That doesn't look right. Why does physics not look right? No, it doesn't look right to me. I've just written that out and it doesn't look like it's actually a thing. But I know it is, obviously. And what was it? Sorry. I've got it in here. I don't know why I keep on checking. I can check up here. Right, prop ID. Now actually I've just realised what I could do. So I could spawn in the new object. I could spawn in the new object before I've deleted it, which would be slightly more efficient, but it would mean that if, say, I was at my maximum object limit, and I tried to swap it, we try and spawn the new one in. It wouldn't work, it would fail, and then we'd delete the existing one. So we'd actually be losing objects and no new object would be spawned in, even though we've not technically hit the object cap as such. So I do need to save them to variables, basically, so I can then delete it and then spawn it in with the data that I've saved. I'm going to do that now. So I'm literally just copying this. The only issue with this type of workflow is all of this, like doing it with these non-object oriented programming styles, is you don't get nice looking code. It makes sense to me, but it's not always the most clean, let's say. In fact, this actually gets a bit more complicated because we need to access the position of... we need to access the position of the model itself. So we need to find... Wasn't it like that? I've also dealt with this in here before as well, when I was getting the rotations, I believe, which will be here. We want to know the there's a way to get the existing transform of that model. What goes in here? What's it want? Guessing the position in the list. So that would be presume it's that. Shouldn't I just be able to give it that? This is what I mean in Unreal, like can't I just give it an ID and get that reference? Surely that would make sense. Apparently not. Time to do some research, I suppose. I will bring over this tab. For so you can see I've already got lots of other searches from previous. Let's try it. Just try to see if I can find the class definition. And then if I go to the get section, there we go. You see, I think I actually understand what it's doing now. I wish it had some kind of description on that variable so I knew what it was, but in essence what I think it means is it needs an effector to store the output in. And I'm just going to call it temp storage. Oh no, temp pos we'll call it. And then here we'll put temp pos, and then in here we'll put true. And what does this? Oh sorry, F transform is what it wants. There we go. I'm guessing it's get location. That seems about right to me, I think. It's not also throwing any red squiggles, so that's a bonus, I suppose. Okay. I think I've done that properly. Try that. Sorry, my brain just stopped working for a second now. I was thinking about other stuff. Right, so what I'm going to do now is obviously we want to access other data, so we're just going to copy Ah. It's easy enough, and this will be same with prop ID actually. There we go. We also need to have the position in the list as well. Don't want to oversight that at all. Why is that not graying out? Oh. That's all fine. And then I believe what we can do now is we can delete the one that we've just accessed. And then this, of course, is the one that we've given it, so prop instance ID. Also, I've just realised as well, actually, we don't need to store these bits of data, simply because when we're spawning it doesn't matter, because we've already been given the new prop ID that we want, and obviously we don't need to store the static mesh list, as that's something that's generated by the engine anyway, by our part of the engine, not UE4. So all we need is that, really. So we'll say spawn a new prop. We want the X, Y, Z, the prop ID, which is the thing that we've been given by the function input, and physics enabled. And it's literally that simple, I think. I say it's that simple, it might not be. I don't think if there's any reasons why spawning new prop might fail, but I can't think. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's give it a go. I'll replace, what's the function called? Change prop type. Prop instance ID, let's say the second one, that being the second one in the list, not position 2 because it's position 1, and the new prop ID that we want. So the existing one is 0, so we want to convert it over to grass. Okay. Let's compile that. a while, see if it's worked. Hopefully it has. No, so that's just deleted it for whatever reason, not spawn a new one in. Did I forget to put that in? No, I did put it in. So I wonder why that's not working. Maybe I'm not resetting certain data at some point. Maybe a quick break will help, a bit of chocolate. It'd be nice if I could build up my audience again, so now I've taken a long break and also I'm not doing this with a coherent schedule anymore. But what was nice about having people watching last time, at least live, is I could kind of take breaks and interact and also chat with people as well. So I will be trying to do that again now that the stream quality is kind of a bit higher standard. And hopefully a more consistent schedule will help with that. That'll be something that I'll be trying to aim for moving forward. It's just been kind of difficult balancing timings around personal life, so I'm going to take a look at my schedule and see if there's a way I can fit it in, basically, every day at the same time. But we'll see how that goes. Right, I'll have a think while I eat. I think what the issue is, so I'm not getting the right position data and therefore it's not spawning it in the correct place. But we will have a look. Oh, hello Bloodluster, if you're just passing through. Right, so let's have a look. So yeah, so it is actually working, I'm just not getting the correct position in from that position return, because here's this thing spawning in here. So what I need to do is I need to revisit this code and see if I'm getting the wrong information. Oh, another thing I need to do actually as well is round it down, because this information that I'll be pulling is actually the world position. I need to round it down to the voxel position. So if I get the constants that I have here, divide it by width, depth and height.
Ecstasy is a street name for the drug methylene deoxymethamphetamine, MDMA, an amphetamine-based synthetic.
I don't know why world width is so far apart from the other ones. I think it's just alphabetical maybe. World depth and divide that by world. Oops. I cannot spell apparently. World height, there we go. That's something I kind of forgot to do, but will be important. I don't know if it'll make a difference with this. I think this is still broken, but we'll see. Let's have a look. What I find quite funny actually is just thinking about it. Whenever me and Josh are on stream, we're always snacking on something. Like whenever we're doing our podcasts and stuff. I never realised how what kind of impression that gives. I promise you, we're not snacking all the time. Not like that anyway. Josh may be more so than me, but. Oh, so he's putting one in. Not quite where it should be. Wonder why that is. This is working, but it's putting it 2 spaces forward. No, 3, 4 faces forward and up. Something weird's going on there. Double check I'm dividing it in the right directions. Yeah, I think so. Let me see if I change its position. It amplifies it at all. So hopefully, since I'm changing these values slightly, it will kind of highlight any more for me. So obviously that's too. Oh, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I know exactly what it is. I'm not actually decreasing it by the right amount. Voxel width, depth and height, not world width, depth and height. That makes a lot of sense. Where am I? Right here. At least it's an easy fix, eh? That. Oh, it did work. I didn't think it had worked so I couldn't see it, but yeah, no, it's there. Oh, great. So basic swapping is working. Obviously, the more complex our objects get, the more I will need to add to each of those. functions to get them to the point where they need to be. But the basic premise is there. Model swapping is working correctly. I might rename this function though, just to something that makes a bit more sense, rather than change prop type. I will call it replace prop. And then set the yeah, that's fine. Okay. So I think that's fine. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to take a quick 5-minute break. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just skip ahead obviously, if we've not edited it out, but we probably won't have done just because of time constraints. But yeah, just skip ahead 5 minutes from now. I will be back in just a moment. Right, I do apologise for the delay. That was significantly longer than a 5-minute break. That was pretty much a 10-minute one. I'll bear that in mind for future breaks. What I'll do, so I'll just quickly swap over again to here. So we have, at this point, readjust that quick. Okay. We've got prop swapping done now. That was a lot easier than I was expecting it to be, actually. So now we want to enable physics interaction. So what I mean by this is, and I think I said this earlier, is I'm looking at the engine and seeing if it's possible to enable collisions on like the models and stuff like that. And also like gravity and that kind of thing. So that in future, if anything's ever removed from, let's say, the floor, like a voxel is updated and something is like freed out of the floor or something like that, maybe a tree, physics are then enabled on that object. And hopefully that'll kind of work as you would expect any physics enabled to obviously interact with the environment. Maybe not with some of the larger ones. Trees, for example, might just, I don't know, might just break, something like that, or they might, yeah, I've no idea. But obviously characters are a good example of things that need to have physics interactions and aren't tied directly to the voxel grid. So that's the kind of thing I mean. Also maybe like fun little physics props as well that the AI can kind of run through. You know, maybe like floor items and that kind of thing. So I'll just put my coffee down. Desk space, because I've got loads of rubbish on it now, and all my snacks. Put that there. One thing I'm also going to try and do now, back in, so like streaming and everything, is take things a bit slower. Like have this kind of time to stop and talk and run through my thought processes rather than having to be talking all the time. Because now that I've got the webcam and the whiteboard, I feel a lot more comfortable kind of stopping to do that, so it's not just my voice anymore. And I want to build more of a bit of a personal connection with you guys as well, so hopefully that'll help towards that. Right, so where to begin? To be honest with you, I don't even know really where to start. I guess the first point to look at is to check the collisions on, well, to see if they even have any collisions. They might not even have any generated meshes. I also wouldn't even know where to begin on enabling physics on something like this. Right, so time, I suppose, to look at the... sorry, I keep on leaving this up. Time to look at the documentation for stuff. So one thing I was just looking at quickly is this thing, double-sided geometry, which I might temporarily need to check on this plane while I'm testing it out with a non-3D modelled object, because what will happen is the bottom side of this isn't actually modelled, so in theory it will just clip through whatever's underneath it. If it was upside down and it was heading towards, excuse me, one of the other planes, it wouldn't matter. But it does in this case. Under normal circumstances this needs to be disabled because everything should have all of the all of its outer facing polys rather than one side that isn't rendered, because the only things that have that are the inside of the voxels, which obviously you can't get to anyway, nor can you see, so I'm trying to think. Right, so let's get up a research tab again. This is something I never actually checked. I don't know if you can have physics on instant static meshes. You should be able to. Can't see why not, because you can obviously collide with certain things. Maybe update the thing's velocity and simulate gravity that way. Could give it a go. Don't really know what to access though. Oh, that needs changing. Place quite. So if I go into the tick function and we access zero, oh no, actually we need to access its static mesh. Find out what it takes. Is that allowed? Can I just do that? I can. Be an interesting little experiment just to see if it falls. Might not necessarily collide with anything though. Might also be a bit too fast. Obviously it's realistic, but there's no air resistance, so. What am I doing? Right, so don't want this anymore. Compile the code again. Remember, we're only changing one of the planes at the moment. This isn't actually the final kind of implementation of this. What will probably happen is I'll have some kind of a loop that iterates over all of the objects and handles physics information for them. Guessing that didn't move. I'll see it. Oh, okay, simulate physics enabled. So let's find that setting. Where's the simulate physics set? Never done this before, so let's see how this goes. Maybe this already has gravity settings. Try this. Add the physics material to this object. Hopefully it hasn't just fucked with everything and now it's all just going to fall. Well, the sky isn't falling, so that's good. It's also not moved though. Potentially it's I imagine it's a code thing maybe then. Let me have a look. That's a little look. I presume that's the thing it wants me to do. I don't know if I need this material. Get rid of this. Or can I not? I don't want it. Can this not be removed? There we go. Simple. Still ain't moving. Not entirely sure what to do about this, to be quite honest. Gives me any warnings now? No. Well, nothing's fallen yet. Is there anything else I can do? Oh, not duplicate it for one. But to be quite honest, I'm not really sure how the physics system within UE4 works. I don't know if I need to add some kind of component to this, or even if those things can simulate physics. Should be able to. Try this. Had that worked, I should have seen something flash past my screen. Maybe if I touch it. Guess this doesn't have any physics enabled on it, does it? Strange. Right, so yeah, at this point, I think this is just going to be me, like, kind of having to take some... This is going to be a matter of me having to take some time and just kind of research this a little bit more. And I don't really want to bore you guys with that, obviously. Maybe next time when I'm kind of a bit fresher and can talk over the top of it a bit more. So what I will do is I'll end the stream here. I think we've had quite a long one. We've had about 2 hours of actual content, so really not too bad at all. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. I hope that this kind of reintroduction to me streaming with the new setup and everything has been somewhat better and more useful than normal. And I hope that you've enjoyed kind of this more direct approach to, I guess, what it is that I've been working on, where I'm actually kind of showing you my progress as I go along and what my plans are for moving forward, like with my list. So what I'll do is I'll leave that list on there. I'll probably add to it over time, and I will go through the process of me kind of checking those boxes in the next live stream. Hopefully, as I do add to this, I can kind of like keep up and really nail some of these checkpoints that I've got to get through to get all this working. I'm kind of rambling now, so my brain's got to the point in the evening where it's just dying. So I will leave it there. But like I say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.